these aren't the only 5 by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden, and it is 5 Fact. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, the 21st of March. It's 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden. This is Moving Home with Charlie. And every week, I run down the 5 newly reported things that I think are most significant to the housing market. And in brief today, we'll be touching on the Rightmove house price index that came out at the beginning of the week, Nationwide increasing its lending loan to value, Halifax reporting record numbers of first-time buyers, the ONS reporting this morning that the government has overshot its borrowing in February by a lot, the debts, what does that mean for the budget, and wage growth. Okay, those are the 5 things I've picked. There might be others that I've missed. And as always, let me know if you think I have missed anything that's, it must be in the last 7 days. It must be something that I can verify with a link, or you can verify with a link. Links to all of these facts that I'm going to be reporting today are in the description below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching live on Instagram, I can't see your questions. You've got to come over to either YouTube or X. Otherwise, I can't see the questions as they come in. But if you're on YouTube or X or LinkedIn or Facebook, I can see your live chat comments. So say hi. Alex Jenkinson, good morning. Okay, let's get started with actually, so this is a precursor to one of the facts, but that is a graph of the UK's public sector net financial liabilities. And that's a graph going back 20 years. And you can see it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And basically, the bigger that graph gets, the poorer we all become. It's that simple, which is why people who think the government should just borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow, the reason our tax burden is so high today is because of previous governments doing that. And if we think it's okay to keep on increasing our borrowing, we are burdening our children and grandchildren with even worse tax and even worse quality of living and standards. It's really, really important understanding that the Chancellor's job to stay within her budget, which she hasn't done, affects us all. Good morning, Fee. But let's get into fact number 1. So the Rightmove house price index came out this week. And what I think is interesting is the comparison between Rightmove's figures and the Halifax and the ONS. Now, Rightmove is, as well as Best Agent, my website, is the only index that just reports on asking prices. And so these figures, bear in mind that these figures are all asking prices, okay? But they're saying that the monthly increase in the average asking price of all new properties was 1.1% over the month before. So this is for February. Prices are 1% higher than this time last year. Now that's interesting because, as you'll see, Halifax says it's 2.9%. They're all different, and it's curious to me and interesting to me that Rightmove's year-on-year price growth figure is the lowest of all of them. It's often the other way around. And the number of sales being agreed is 9% ahead of this time last year. That's obviously good news. More transactions is good for everybody, but that's 9% higher on a not that big a number last year, so it's not like fantastic news. And they do report on a lot more property coming to the market and a 10-year high. They've also mentioned a massive logjam of 575,000 moves in the legal completion process. That is staggering. If you think there are only 1.1 million in the whole year, that is saying more than 50% of the entire year's transactions are basically backed up in a traffic jam in the conveyancing process. And that, of course, is from people trying to beat the stamp duty deadline, which we are now 10 days away from. Just 10 days. And poor old conveyancers, through no fault of theirs, are experiencing an absolute tsunami of work, and people ringing up and going, you must make mine complete. You must make mine complete. But you are in the lap of the gods now, whether it happens or whether it doesn't. But if you don't, the average first-time buyer who's trying to buy and doesn't meet the 31st of March deadline is going to be seeing on average a £6,000 increase in stamp duty payments. Morning, Sasha. Yeah, my internet's fine this morning. It was just you. Right, so that's Rightmove. And I think the important thing to notice here, always look at their breakdown by property type. So they break it down by first buyers, second steppers, and top of the ladder. And it's interesting, excuse me, that the first time buyer monthly change in asking price is the lowest of the three at just 0.5%. Second steppers up 0.8%, and top of the ladder up 2.1%. And this reflects what I think, which is that the top of the ladder asking prices are by far the most over optimistic, and it is by far where the worst overvaluing happens. And that's why you're seeing top of the ladder asking prices increasing, asking prices, right, just in the last 28 days, increasing faster than first-time buyers or second steppers. Okay, that was fact number one. Fact number two, Nationwide announced this week that it's increasing its maximum loan to value for new interest-only and foreign national mortgages. So the reason I think this is this doesn't actually help you much if you're a first-time buyer. But the point is, where's the headline there? Just leave it there. If you want to read the article, go below and have a read of it. The point that makes this relevant to me is that it's a symptom of lenders struggling to lend. Now, while first-time buyer numbers are high and over 50% of all transactions, second movers and remortgaging and borrowing for second moves is lower. And the lenders have to keep lending to stay in business. And if they can't lend as much, it's a struggle. So there's more competition. So they start to pull out the stops to try and, where can we lend more? Where can we lend more? Where can we lend more? And that's what I think is happening nationwide. And that's an interesting thing. And when you combine that with the fact that a very large house builder in Devon went into liquidation, the signs, if you want to see them, if you want to look for them, and you want to look past the headlines, are quite powerful, that all is not well in the finance sector of the housing market. Alex Jenkins says, can anyone get an interest-only mortgage or just landlords? It depends on the lender. I think it's possible, but it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. It'll get you into real trouble. And it sounds lovely. Hey, never pay back the loan, just pay back the interest. Not a good call, even as a buy-to-let loan. When house prices were rising strongly, it was different. They're not. Interest-only mortgages are, it's like basically maxing out your credit card and only ever making the interest payment. You're making it for life. And you do have to pay it back at some point. And if you can't, your property gets taken away. Okay, Halifax. Now, this is where I think it's interesting to help people understand that you should generally ignore the specifics of the house price indices and look at them compared to each other. Because if you just compare Rightmove and Halifax, for example, the Rightmove average house price, I'll get back to it here for a second, is £371,000. That is, by the way, the highest of all the house price indices, right? £371,000. That's over £100,000 more than the ONS's average UK house price, which is £268,000. You can read into that what you like. But we come back to the Halifax, and they say that the average house price is £298,000. So £70,000 less than Rightmove, but still £30,000 more than the ONS. Who is right? Surely the average house price is the average house price. Well, no, it's open to interpretation with a pretty big margin of error, which is why you should all take everything in these indices with a pinch of salt. You can get a feel for what's happening overall when you look at all of them and compare them all. And compare them with, this time a year ago, what they were saying. And if it was 10% up a year ago, but this year it's only 1% up, that's a fairly sizable difference. But nothing in any of these national indices affects your particular transaction. Your market for the property you are buying or selling is unique to that property, and none of these monthly readouts make much difference. But the Halifax, so yeah, they're saying annual change 2.9% versus Rightmove's 1%. But they're saying house prices dipped in February. Versus very, very slightly dipped in February. Remember, this is measuring Halifax's mortgage lending. So it's mortgage-only transactions, and it's a fairly small sample of the whole country overall. Scotland sees house prices rise at fastest pace in 13 months at 3.8%. Again, take it with a pinch of salt. It doesn't mean that all house prices in Scotland are going up by that much. And you break it down. And what I think you can see from their news about the fact that first-time buyers are now the largest proportion of buyers that they've ever been explains why prices at the first-time buyer level have slid less or held up more than all the other prices above. Now, the most popular properties are semi-detached and terraced homes. And flats and detached houses have been doing different things with prices. And so you've got 4 different property types, and then you've got different bands: first-time buyer, second stepper, top of the ladder. And that creates a matrix of lots of different micro markets, and all of them do different things. And then you add in the regional variation. So don't read too much into these national house price indices. What matters is what's happening in the local market for your particular kind of property at your particular budget. But it's good news that the first-time buyer numbers are up. More people are getting a home. This is genuinely good news. What worries me is how many of those first-time buyers have overpaid and are going to get in trouble in the coming years. For all of them who haven't overpaid, congratulations, well done. You've reduced your risks. But I also think the fact that first-time buyers are the largest proportion of mortgage transactions doesn't necessarily just mean that there are more first-time buyers. It's also the fact that there are fewer buyers further up the ladder. Melvin P says, Charlie, you do realize banking will be gone in the next few years and it'll all be AI blockchain. Well, fun enough, that's something that we discussed last night with Sasha and Stig. And by the way, to those of you who watched last night's live stream, I'm very, very sorry about the appalling internet connection speed problems that we had. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you fast forward the first 25 minutes. It's a 2-hour live stream, which we did around my kitchen table here last night with Sasha Yanchin, first time guest on the channel, and Housing Stig. The three of us were at it for 2 hours. The first 25 minutes, pretty unbearable. Skip past that to about 25, 26 minutes, and then it's okay. But we discussed this. One of the things we discussed last night was CBDC versus crypto and blockchain and when it's coming and all that kind of stuff. It was a really good fun talk. So thank you to those of you who came last night and persevered through the nightmare. Alrighty, let's get back into the facts. What fact number are we on? Yes, so today the Office for National Statistics announced government borrowing was 10.7 billion in February. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it was budgeted to be 6 billion. So it was 4 billion over. All right. So this graph here, the right-hand end of this graph, that pale blue line is the one that they're reporting. And let's just get it as big as we can. That pale blue line on the right-hand side, that is just above 10 billion, and it was supposed to be 6 billion in order to come within the OBR's forecast and Rachel Reeves's budget. And the nightmare for everyone is this, right? So UK borrow, as reported on Bloomberg, UK borrowing overshoot hits 20 billion. She's now gone 20 billion over her own budget in borrowing, right? And it's not glib to say the fact that this is I raise this as a genuine concern, right? This is somebody who is on record, both when she worked at Halifax and in Parliament or Bank of England, had to have her company credit card suspended. She was reprimanded twice for overspending on company credit cards. Now, that might sound like, oh, it's just that's not a big deal. It is a big deal because it explains that she doesn't understand the responsibility of what happens when you're spending other people's money and you spend too much. She's demonstrated with her own track record that she thinks it's okay to go over budget with other people's money. Now, when it was Halifax and she worked there, that doesn't affect anyone too much, right? But when it's with government money, taxpayer money that we are going to have to pay back, right? We will all feel this. We will all feel it. Rich and poor, we will all feel this as the country's debt burden gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And our taxes go up and up and up, and public services get cut. So we've got her spring budget, right? Her spring budget next week on Wednesday. And they're already prepping us for serious austerity budget cuts because growth isn't working. And growth only comes from one place, and that is companies creating jobs. Right? Companies creating jobs is where growth for us, as you know, in GDP per head terms, companies creating jobs is the only source of growth for us as individuals. And every policy she's brought in has made it harder and worse for companies to create jobs, which is why, let me just get this graph up. I'm sorry, I didn't have it ready, but it's worth showing. That is a graph that came out today or yesterday on the ONS. I'm back. I'm sorry, I'm having more internet connection problems than I did last night. Right, this graph is really important because this is the graph that shows us where employment is, what's happening to employment, right? And all of those with the bar going to the left are employers who are reducing job vacancies. And so what this graph is showing us is that all employers who are employing 10 or more people have been cutting job vacancies, and only employers with 1 to 9 people are increasing job vacancies. That is a direct result, and this is a December 2024 to February 2025 3-month average vacancies in the UK. This is the reaction to the Rachel Reeves budget. Look at it. Look how severely negative that is. Right there is what happened straight after the budget. Almost all employers reduced job vacancies. This was completely predictable, right? If for anyone who understands how the economy actually works, this was 100% predictable, and it's why all of those large employers, which is the very, very bottom line of that graph, wrote to the government an open letter, over 100 of them, saying, we will have no choice but to cut jobs, and we won't be able to give pay rises, and this will do the opposite of bring growth if you increase employers' national insurance contributions. So, everybody, we have now fewer job vacancies and fewer opportunities to earn a living and save up and get a house than we did before the budget as a direct result of these policies. And not only as a direct result of the policies, but also being made worse by the fact that she's overshooting on borrowing. So she's created her very own £20 billion black hole in 6 months or 8 months, whatever it is, right? She's created her own black hole in a matter of months. And this is nothing personal against Rachel Reeves. I don't care about her personally. I care about the fact that she's the Chancellor in charge of our money, spending our taxpayer money, and she's spaffing it and not delivering anything in return. I see a government in total disarray and total panic. This is not anti-Labour, pro-Labour. The Tories were terrible. The Tories were terrible. They deserved to lose the election. But that doesn't mean that Labour aren't even worse in a very different way. But this is going to come home to roost at some point very painfully. It's not good. Right, the last bit, the last fact, which is, I think, slightly better news, is that we also had wage growth announced yesterday, along with the job vacancies. And annual wage growth continues to be very strong. So nominal wage growth before inflation was 5.9%, or 5.8% of its total earnings. But adjusted for inflation, which is very important to do because otherwise it creates a false sense of improving wealth, was 2.1% for total pay. So that means the average weekly wage is now 2.1% higher than a year ago, even after taking inflation into account. They use CPIH inflation for this. So you've got 2% more, right? You've got 102 quid instead of 100 quid. If actual household inflation wasn't much higher than 3.9%, you would be better off. We would be better off. But people's bills, like car insurance, gas, electricity, the energy price cap, everything's still going up faster. Food has stopped going up, but everything else is going up. And so in real life, when an individual person applies to a mortgage broker and goes through their budget to work out their affordability, I think people are still worse off despite this. Now, this is good news, right? It genuinely is good news, and it helps because people, whatever's happening in the government, whatever's happening in the economy, people need and still want to buy a home. And it's certainly better that this number is positive than it's negative, but it is not in the real world. I don't think in the real world anyone is going, yeah, I definitely feel rich. I did this time last year. On average, yes, of course, there are some individuals who definitely are. Yeah, Alex Jenkinson makes a very valid point that a huge rise in minimum wage coming in 10 days' time. I think it's 12 or 15% rise. And that's going to affect inflation as well, and job vacancies. Right, guys. Thank you for bearing with me and sticking with me through my yet more internet connection problems. Curse you, Virgin Media. Curse you, Virgin Media, for having provided me with very good internet here for 15 years, and then suddenly it breaks and you can't fix it for months. Unable to fix it for months. Couldn't fix it, haven't fixed it, didn't fix it. I leave and you're still coming after me for money. I'm genuinely sorry to everyone for the internet connection problems. I hope it hasn't bothered things too much. Do we have any last minute questions? I've got to go in a minute, but do we have any last minute questions that you'd like me to answer before I hop off? Do we have any questions here? Wow, Jason Leung makes a very, very potent observation. Austerity 2.0 is going to be very interesting for the UK, since, let's be real, everything is already at bare bones. I agree with that. B.A. Malakas says, tax the king, make the UK a better place for you, for me, and the entire human race. It's a little known fact, but it is actually publicly verifiable that the Crown Estate pays more tax, and they pay it voluntarily. They don't have to. They contribute billions in tax every year that isn't taken into account in official numbers because it's voluntary. But they do actually make a positive contribution to the Exchequer, far more, as far as I'm aware, than the cost of the civil list. Check it out. If you don't believe me, go check it out. Victoria Hamilton says food is about to go up catastrophically very soon. Why is that, Victoria? Hope not. Where do you get that from? I'd be curious to know. By the way, guys, one of the things I've been thinking about is paying attention to this Gary Stevenson and Dan Priestley interview on Diary of a CEO that came out yesterday. We all know that the political system is riddled with problems, but for those of us wanting to solve our problems today, there's nothing on offer that gives us a solution to our problems right today, right? Whatever the government does today, tomorrow, next week, I mean, there's going to be a budget next week, is going to affect stuff in the future and gradually, unless they do anything radical. So in the meantime, all we can do is make the best of the situation, right? Life gives you lemons, try and make lemonade. And that's the idea of this channel, which is to try and help everyone that's navigating the housing market to try and get a home if you want one, sell a home if you need to sell it, without being sucked in by all of the propaganda in the industry. That's a good question. Creed asks, how do you believe the new stamp duty on property above 300k will affect properties below 300k? Well, first of all, that 300k threshold is only for first-time buyers. The new threshold for everybody else, which was at 250,000, is dropping to 125,000. Okay, so properties below are still going to be affected for everyone except for first-time buyers. The stamp duty changes on the 1st of April are disastrously bad news for the housing market because it will reduce transactions, and reducing transactions is bad for the economy, it's bad for social mobility, it's bad for people who need to move house. It just creates friction. It's just like clogging up the system. Stamp duty for homes, not for investment properties or anything else, but stamp duties for first homes or only homes should be abolished completely. Some argue stamp duty on all residential property transactions should be abolished completely. And I am actually a supporter of that too, but that's a second step. The first step that would massively improve things is if they abolished stamp duty for people buying a home. So even if you're moving your second time or your third time, you don't pay. Why would you tax people? Why would you not tax them on their first move, but tax them on their second move? It doesn't make any sense. And it would free up so much. There's so many people, especially with the larger properties, would start to free up and sell those larger properties and downsize. Kirsty also posted on this on X the other day, and I reposted it because I agree with it. I would actually eliminate stamp duty completely on residential property, because the increase in transaction volumes would stimulate massive job creation, because when people move home, it's one of the most expensive things you ever do. And you change cars, you change your white goods, you change insurance policies. It is few things stimulate economic activity more than people moving home. It also improves the jobs market. If it's easier to move from place to place, people will relocate for jobs more easily. So the lower the burden on moving, the more people move. And the more people move, the better for the economy, better for jobs. Literally everyone's better off if more people are moving house. That's why I have this channel. The more people moving house, the better for everyone. And that is why, if you were to scrap stamp duty on residential transactions completely, you would see the tax take improve in other areas. You'd see employment go up, which would reduce the unemployment bill. You'd see, on the back of employment going up, you'd see PAYE contributions would go up. You'd see corporation tax going up. So what the government might lose in stamp duty takings, it would quickly make on all those other taxes, receipts going up on the back of economic prosperity. Fix housing, fix everything. It's not just a catchy strapline, it's true. Fix housing, fix everything. Step one, scrap stamp duty. On that happy note, I've got to go. Oh dear. Bogdan Tudorek says, I sold within weeks using your advice. Don't overprice. Congratulations. Thank you for listening. It makes me so happy when I hear people have actually listened. The issue is everything on the market now has been there for months and people are not negotiating and overvaluing, so they have to pull out now. Yep, that's true. Rich Jeffrey says, I was 6 months into selling 2 houses to buy 1. Completed the sale of 1 and pushing hard to get the others completed. Any suggestions on how to get third parties to get a move on? Well, in the next couple of weeks, there's really nothing you can do. Conveyancers are just, assuming the conveyancers have got everything that they need, and assuming the conveyancers in those transactions aren't waiting on other parties for information. In the next couple of weeks, there's nothing you can do, other than make sure that everyone that needs to give information to the conveyancers has done so. If you want to chasing is an art form. If you chase badly, it actually works against you and it makes people not want to help. If you phone up and stamp your feet and complain and wag your finger at someone for just not being good enough, that's just not good enough. Nobody does a bad job on purpose. And what you need to do when you're chasing someone is to try and make them feel like they want to help you. So delicate, balanced, polite chasing has a much better result and outcome than angry foot stamping, right? Angry foot stamping achieves nothing other than the person on the phone putting the phone on going, what a twat, and not wanting to help you, going, that's it, I'm now going to put them to the back of the queue. If you piss off the person you are relying on to help you, don't expect them to want to help you. Literally, ask nicely. Sorry, Rich, I'm not suggesting that's something that you're doing. In fact, the fact you're asking this question suggests you are a reasonably minded person. But without knowing the exact details, Have all mortgage brokers got what they need for the transaction? Have all surveys been done? Are they booked if they haven't been done? Are mortgage offers made? Have lender surveys been done? Have inquiries been answered? There's a long list of things. I mean, it still boggles my mind that anyone thinks that selling a house is easy. Only people who've never sold a house or have sold it too cheap think it's easy, especially if you're in a chain. It's an absolute gauntlet. I'm not saying that there aren't some people who sold quickly, right? If you get a great estate agent and you sell without a chain, you might have a painless process. You got lucky, you're in the minority. For most people, this transaction process is a living nightmare, which is why I've built Best Agent, my home moving site Best Agent. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's live and it's still very much in the sort of beta testing phase, and there's still stuff to be ironed out. But whether you're looking for a home or whether you're looking for an agent, check out Best Agent, please. It'd be great. On that happy note, I really must go. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. And remember, if you're buying, don't overpay, and be prepared. Finances, proof of mortgage in principle, conveyancer. If you're actually offering, get your conveyancer ready. Don't get your conveyancer ready before you're ready to offer. When you know you're ready to offer and you're really confident you're going to be offering, that is the point at which you want to engage a conveyancer. If you're selling, don't overprice. And if you're selling and you really want to maximize your chances of a sale at the best price in the shortest time, nothing speeds the process up faster than coming to the market contract ready. What that means is getting a conveyancer before you even choose an agent. Okay, getting a conveyancer before you choose an agent and saying, please, can you help me get the paperwork exchange ready for my sale? There's a lot to do. And there's a lot that you've got to do. Forms to fill out, checks to do, anti-money laundering checks, all kinds of stuff, right? But if you bring your property to the market with an estate agent, contract ready, two things happen. Number one, you are a much more attractive property to buyers than the ones that are going to take longer to exchange. And number two, you make the agent's job easier and you will therefore get a lower fee. So without any extra cost to you, right, you're going to have to pay for conveyancing at some point. If you get it going early, you're going to get a lower fee from your agent, you're going to get a faster sale, more interest, and a better chance of getting competing buyers. Okay. Anyone who really wants to sell and doesn't come to the market contract ready, why? You might get an agent saying, oh, no, don't worry about that till later. That's a crap agent. You might ring up a conveyancer. They might say, oh, no, it's too early for that. Come back to us when you've got an offer. Wrong conveyancer. You must find a conveyancer. And that's why the guys I work with, right, Thomas Legal and Sweeney Miller, both outstanding award-winning firms, welcome you as a seller if you want to get your property contract ready before marketing it. And for two reasons. They know that you're then going to have a quicker transaction. So it's a quicker transaction for them as well as you. It makes no sense to put your property on the market without it being contract ready. It makes no sense. You don't have to have a property search pack done. The buyer can do that at that point, right? You just need to have your sale pack ready. You might choose to do a property search pack as well. That can speed it up, but they do parts of the property search pack expire after 90 days. But that's a separate thing from being exchange ready. Cash buyers, for example, don't have to have a property search pack at all. But every buyer, cash or not, needs you as a seller to have your paperwork exchange ready before you can exchange. So why not have that ready right at the outset? And always talk to a mortgage broker before you're moving. Whether you're a first-time buyer, whether you're selling to buy, know where you are financially. It speeds the process up. Talk to my guys here. They're fantastic. I've been working with them for a while. Otherwise, guys, I know I keep saying I'm going to go, but I am going to go now. What did that? Hang on, what's that? Yeah, Teddy Kleindienst. On that topic, it's always the vendors that delay it because they weren't ready. Don't be one of those sellers. You're only hurting your own chances. Yes, and then they complain that it's all going too slowly. Best of luck, Teddy. Teddy's just set up on his own as an agent. He's left employment and gone self-employed, which is what I think everyone, if you have the opportunity to do what you do self-employed, why give half or 2/3 of the value of your work to your employer and only get paid for 1/3 of the value of your work when you could do the work yourself and keep it all? Yeah, different risk profile, but you're your own boss. You get to keep everything. Self-employment is, wherever possible, a much, much better way forward, especially if you want to save and that kind of stuff. You're welcome, Rich. Right. I'm actually leaving. I'm actually going. Bye. See you soon. Lots of love. Have a great weekend. And if you haven't already,